welcome to the Dr. Tim Jennings Show, where we seek real answers to life's real problems. I'm Dr. Tim Jennings, here with Susan Collenberg and Lori Atkins.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about marriage, divorce, and remarriage today. But before that, we're going to take a question from a listener. Stephanie has asked, what does it mean to be equally yoked? I hear much advice on marriage from Christians, and it seems like they are defining being equally yoked as being from the same denomination. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that she's probably hearing correctly what they're saying.
Yes.
Yes. And for many people who use this Bible passage of not being unequally yoked, they are really using it in a very proscribed way, with a very narrow structure, and it often means belonging to the same denominational organization. I think that's not what it means at all. Okay, I think it really means to find somebody that you're genuinely compatible with across the various domains of life. And the things that help us be compatible and successful, yes, it is absolutely true that you're going to be much better off if you do find somebody who shares your cultural and religious values, that wants to practice and live life similarly. For instance, if you're a vegetarian, regardless of religion, a lot of people, vegetarians these days, aren't religious, and the person you're seeking to marry is a beef eater and a cattle rancher, okay, there might be some tension. Right. There might be some tensions when it comes to fixing the meals and who's fixing the meals there. It could cause problems. If you're a church attender or a mosque attender and the other person isn't, there might be some tension, particularly when children come along and how we're going to raise the home. So I think it goes way beyond religion. And one of the things that data seems to show is a factor that is important in most people having compatible marriages is being equally yoked to somebody who has a similar IQ as you do.
Interesting.
And that you don't hear that often. But IQ is really important. You want somebody who is bright enough to be able to engage with you, to understand your dreams, your aspirations, your creativity, and can actually give meaningful dialogue back. If you're with somebody who seems to never get you, they may have a good heart, they may want to, but they're always just not tracking. They just can't process on your level. You will become disinterested and bored with them typically. And so it is important to be equally yoked in a close enough way of IQ that you can really engage in meaningful ways, as well as the other more values within the culture, religion, and society.
So is marriage still important in our society today?
Well, marriage is absolutely important because marriage is the bedrock of our society. It forms the homes where the children are raised. Children do better in the best homes for kids, where you get the best outcomes, where they were most likely to succeed in life, where they have the healthiest physically, where the healthiest psychologically and mentally, are a two-parent home in which there is low conflict, good structure, and love. Okay?
Yes.
But the next best home for a child is a single-parent home where there's good structure, love, and low conflict. And the next best home, which is not as good as the other two I just mentioned, is a two-parent home where there's constant arguing and fighting and conflict that kids don't do as well. And the worst of all, where they do absolutely the worst, is single-parent homes where there's always arguments, no structure, conflicts, hostility. Those are the worst homes.
That's interesting because a lot of people think, well, even though we hate each other, let's stay together for the children.
Yes, and that's based on a lot of misinformation. I think it primarily comes out of a lot of churches because it is true that marriage is the ideal. But that ideal is to be other-centered, love, have a certain level of maturity, capacity to work through issues. It doesn't mean there's never disagreement. Healthy marriages and other relationships have disagreement, but they handle them as mature people without retaliation, without hostility. You don't become each other's enemy. You're each other's friends, and if you see your partner as your best friend engaging in something, you approach them in ways to help benefit them, not to attack and ridicule them. So imagine being on a ball team and you had a person on your ball team who had the heart to help the team. They really wanted to help the team, but they were not maybe as coordinated. They hadn't played as much. They're not very good, but they're very distressed whenever they strike out or drop the ball. Your attitude toward them is, well, let's get together before the game. Let's get together after the game. You're gonna practice and help them. But what's your attitude towards a member of the team who you view as being very good, a jock, really even better than you? but you think they're purposely striking out and purposely dropping the ball. What's your attitude now?
They're against you.
And do you want to help them?
No.
Or do you want to attack them? See, so when you look at your partners in marriage, I tell you, I do marriage counseling a lot. Most of the time when there's marriage problems, they don't see their partner as somebody who has the best interest at heart that's just maybe struggling with some things we need to help with. They see them as somebody who's purposely dropping the ball, purposely undermining the marriage. And there is this retaliation and this sense of how dare you and this anger that builds. And so really stepping back and having a different mindset can be very helpful.
And think about what that is teaching children.
Well, exactly right. So you asked if marriage is still important. I think it's absolutely important. Right. I think societies would collapse without marriages. Yeah, but
healthy marriages.
Healthy marriages, exactly.
And so how are healthy marriages designed to function?
Well, under an umbrella of love and trust. And love and trust is not something you can declare. You can trust me.
Yes.
Right.
No, trust and love grow out of loving and other-centered living and trustworthy behavior. You have to actually be trustworthy in order for someone to be able to really genuinely trust you.
It has to be experienced.
It's right. And that's part of the relationship. But you actually have to be trustworthy. And a lot of people get confused here because they have maybe no, I don't have any intention to harm. I didn't mean to do this, but they don't have any maturity either. And so they don't have capacities to really govern themselves well. So healthy relationships require healthy people. Healthy relationships require healthy people. And so the first thing to evaluate is, am I mature and healthy? Can I communicate in mature ways? Can I tolerate disagreement? If somebody doesn't see it my way, if somebody gets mad at me, can I stand my ground and be at peace with myself even though they're not happy with me?
Right.
And then explore their concerns with them, but not feel I have to placate them.
Right.
Oh, so many people don't know how to function like this.
Yeah.
Right.
They base their sense of well-being on the attitudes and feedback of other people.
Right.
This is not healthy relating, and these relationships often become very conflictual.
Well, and even in the search for a partner, I think a lot of people are looking for someone to complete them. You know what I mean? That they feel incomplete without being in a relationship, instead of evaluating that I need to bring a healthy person to the table in this relationship. That's what I can provide, and then find another healthy person to be with.
This is brilliantly said, and what you've just pointed out is you can approach the relationship. I'm seeking a relationship to get something I need. I'm seeking a relationship to share something I have.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, two different things.
And the mature relationship is I want to share the love, the life experiences with somebody who can appreciate and share back themselves with me. That's maturity. I need them to love me. I need them to admire me. I need them to like me. I need them to attend me. I need, and I'm empty without them. Those relationships are inherently dysfunctional and usually crash and burn.
Right.
Well, and that, I mean, half of marriages are ending in divorce. So that seems to explain some of that. And I think also we were talking about the impact on children. If you've got children that have grown up in these conflict-ridden homes, they really don't have a good example to look to know if they're in a healthy relationship or even what a healthy relationship looks like.
And this is a good point you're pointing out as well. So why do so many marriages end in divorce? Well, starting out, many people are coming from homes in which they didn't have good, healthy relationship behaviors modeled for them and taught to them, so they don't have a foundation for a healthy relationship themselves. They don't expect healthy relationships themselves. And then many people, because of that, make poor selections.
Right.
They don't actually try to evaluate the objective qualities and qualifications that they themselves bring, and then the potential life partner is bringing to the relationship. They often go based on the momentary feeling of how it feels, and then they have distorted beliefs about what a healthy marriage is.
What they've seen as normal is unhealthy.
And many of them have this belief that a healthy marriage is one where I stay in a constant state of sexual arousal. Okay? And if something happens where my feelings of arousal, my desire feelings should change, then that means I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Do you hear this?
Not be the right
This
person.
is the craziest, most dysfunctional, most distorted, most false, corrupt idea in society, that I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Okay? This idea of in love, what they're really saying is, I'm not being sexually aroused at the moment.
Yes.
I don't have that passionate desire for you anymore. Well, I give this example. Anybody out here who's questioning and doubting me on this, I want you to imagine a time, maybe it was you've just married the person of your dreams. You are stepping into the honeymoon suite. Okay, and as you step in the honeymoon suite, I think most of us would agree that you have an intense desire. And so you would say, I'm in love with this person. Yes. And there's an intense arousal to, consummate this relationship. And what would happen if, as you're stepping through, somebody smashed your foot with a hammer?
That would be...
Smashed it right then. Your foot just got smashed with a hammer. What happens to your arousal at that moment?
It's gone.
Do you have this intense arousal? You still want to have that consummation at that moment?
Not at that moment.
I'm worried about my foot.
Do you love your spouse less?
No.
Wait, but your desire's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't have the desire. What's happened? Okay? And what people, and you can see this, so I use the physical example. When you're in physical pain, it absolutely crushes romantic desire. Okay? That's normal. So people recognize that and they go, yes, but I still love them. What they don't recognize is that when relationships become unhealthy, then injuries happen not to the body, but to the heart.
Okay.
And people get emotionally wounded.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're emotionally wounded, the same thing happens to the desire.
Yes.
As if you were physically wounded. You lose that arousal. You lose that desire. Why? Because you're in pain. And worse, somebody smashes your foot at the honeymoon. How about worse? The person you're married to is the one who smashed your foot. Now what happens to your desire? So when you're in a relationship where you are being hurt by your partner, emotionally hurt by your partner, I still love you. I'm not in love with you. It's a distortion of reality. You're not expected to have those feelings where this type of hurt and injury is ongoing. But if you deal with the dysfunction, if you restore healthy interacting, then those desired feelings will come back.
Awesome. So many marriages end in divorce. Recap for us some of those reasons.
So, poor selection to start with, okay? Emotion-based decision-making, seeking to get and neediness rather than being mature enough to give, seeking relationship for selfish purposes, and then false expectations.
Okay.
So these are the big reasons why so many marriages end in divorce.
Okay. So I know some women who are actually in abusive relationships, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, but because there's some hard and fast grounds for divorce, the main one being adultery, and they don't think their spouse has cheated on them, but they're in an abusive relationship and they're very reluctant to leave because the church doesn't recognize that as valid grounds for leaving a marriage.
Yeah. And so you're basically saying, women who being abused and they want to get out of the relationship, but their church tells them they can't because the husband hasn't slept with somebody else.
Okay.
All right. So if you're in a situation like that, first question you have to ask. Now we're going to go through some objective thinking. Okay. What action, if the woman could take in that circumstances, which would do the greatest harm to herself, to her husband, and to the children? What action could she take?
To stay.
Stay. Thank you. Brilliant. You actually get it. Yeah. Do you know to stay only perpetuates her own abuse? If she stays, it allows her husband to continue to mistreat her, which only sears his conscience, hardens his heart, warps his character, and gives terrible dysfunctional atmosphere to the children, which is damaging to the children. So if you take an action of love, and love always seeks to heal, love always seeks to restore, love always seeks to protect, love always seeks to stop injury and stop abuse, okay? So if you take the act of love, you stand up to the abusive husband and you say, hey, this is unacceptable. This is destructive. You are disqualifying yourself from the role of husband. And if you don't get into therapy, get your anger management stuff, learn how to become a loving husband who can be a protector and builder up of your wife and the family. If you can't do that, I'm out of here. And you move out and you file for divorce. That's what you do.
So we can kind of tail into Lori's original question. What about remarriage? I know that a lot of churches will look at those circumstances and say, you cannot be remarried.
Yeah, and that's because the churches are not dealing with reality.
Exactly.
They're not actually, when they do this, I will tell you, they are not concerned with the health and welfare of their members. Yes. What they're concerned with is institutional doctrine, institutional rules and enforcing of those rules, and they're fearful of the disintegration of the institution. It's also a very primitive way of looking at the whole institution of marriage.
Yes.
Now they will quote Scripture. God hates divorce, it says in Scripture.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
Sure he does. Sure he does. Yet they were given the writs of divorcement. They were given,
Yes.
and Jesus said they were only given the writs of divorcement because of the hardness of their hearts. If you put this together in a reality, not a rules-based, the rules-based thinkers, there's no consequence. It's just the rules. You follow the rules, and then the superior person in charge has to punish you. And that's how the churches try to apply the divorce principles. That if he hadn't hit the checkbox of adultery, so if he hits a checkbox of adultery, then you're clean.
Then you're
but if he
free.
doesn't do it, then you're still trapped in this abusive cycle because that's what the rules say. That's not actually biblical. If you look at design law stuff and think about, hey, God created and how he built reality to work, then number one, you understand that adultery is not restricted to the physical. Adultery is primarily, at its meaning, is betrayal. And so when you marry somebody, you promise to give yourself to them, to love, honor, cherish till death do you part. And your heart is in their hands. Your well-being is in the partner's hands. And if they beat you, they are betraying your trust, which is adultery. Okay? That's what adultery actually is, the betrayal of the trust.
Right.
So this is what the Bible is trying to teach people, and the churches who are on the rules, they don't see that. So you have to come back to a reality base. So why does he hate divorce then? Why do you give him the writ? Okay, so I give this analogy. Doctors hate to amputate limbs.
Right.
They don't like to cut people's feet off or people's arms off. But in some circumstances, doctors amputate limbs. Why would doctors amputate a limb if they hate it so much? When it's gangrenous.
Yes.
And if the limb is gangrenous and you don't amputate it, what happens?
Death of
The person dies.
Yes.
And so you amputate the limb in the gangrenous situation. And this is what the writ of divorcement was given for. You divorce because of the hardness of their hearts. Their hearts are gangrenous. Love doesn't exist there anymore. They're selfish. They're exploitive. These are men who will beat and exploit and hurt their wives. And if they can't have the lifeblood of love flow back into their hearts and re-infuse them to bring life, and they remain hard-hearted and stony and gangrenous, then it is better to divorce them than to have that dysfunctional relationship and abuse continue, which will destroy the individuality of the wife as she succumbs to it, and further harden the heart of the husband.
Yes.
So yes, that's why. So divorce. And then you ask the question of remarriage.
Yes.
Well, because you understand that in reality that you're divorcing because your husband's committed adultery, the adultery of betraying the trust that you've placed in him, then you're completely free to remarry.
Right.
Okay.
And anybody who says otherwise, they have them come talk to me. And if they if they tell you can't be in that organization, then you say, well, thank you for letting me know that you're not a healthy enough organization to deserve my membership.
Right.
Because they're not.
Right.
They're an abusive organization at that point.
And then I think it becomes down to the individual's healthiness. And you've talked about that in previous shows, and you talk about it in your books, that a person has to have that healthiness. That's their first prioritize is to be healthy.
Now, let's be clear. I am not advocating willy-nilly divorces.
Understood.
Right.
I am not advocating, oh, you didn't cook dinner the way I wanted it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I'm advocating, and I'm not even advocating just filing for divorce because one time your husband either got intoxicated or just got angry and shoved you against the wall on the very first time that you just walk out and get divorced. No, I'm advocating that when the situation is gangrenous and not amenable to healing, actual healing. So if you're in a situation where there was violence perpetrated against you, the very first time it happens, and it might be verbal violence,
Right.
it might not be physical. It just might be intimidation without actually touching.
Yes.
That's when you start standing up and saying, hey, this is unhealthy.
Right.
We need to make interventions to bring healing principles to bear. Love only exists in an atmosphere of freedom. If we're using coercion, if we're using intimidation, if we're using threat, that atmosphere will destroy love and incite rebellion.
Right.
We are going down a path of destruction for both of us. And you stand up early on and you say, hey, but you know what? I promised that I wouldn't run at the first sign of problem. I promised that I would work through the difficult times with you for better or for worse. And so now this problem's arising. This is not working. We need to get into some counseling. We need to do some inventory. We need to identify what's contributing to this dysfunction. And then let's move into health. And if that happens, then the marriage is safe. But if you attempt that and the person doubles down on their dysfunction, refuses to engage, you don't stay under all costs.
Right.
Okay, so let's be clear about that.
Okay.
And I mean, anyone who has been divorced understands why God said he hates divorce because it's traumatic.
And it only happens when love breaks down.
Yes.
Divorce only happens when love breaks down. God is love. He doesn't like love breaking down. He likes love thriving. And when love thrives in both hearts, divorce never happens.
Right.
And he doesn't say he hates people who are divorced. He
No.
says he hates divorce.
Yes, just like doctors hate amputating limbs. I tell you,
Yes.
if you remember that metaphor, it just clears it up completely.
So, what about children and their role in a marriage that's ending in divorce?
Yes. So sometimes I've seen the whole spectrum in my years as a psychiatrist, and when there are mature adults who have dysfunction between the two of them, but they're mature enough, they can divorce and protect the children.
Sure.
They will tell the children. They will have a conversation. Your mommy and daddy have decided not to live together anymore because we feel like it's going to be better for us to be in separate homes. But we want you to be sure this has nothing to do with you. You didn't cause this. And mommy's still going to be your mommy. Daddy's still going to be your daddy. And we love you just as much as always. Okay? You reinforce that and you take away their fears and insecurities. It has anything to do with them. And you don't put them in the middle. And you don't tell them why.
Right.
You don't
And as a
discuss the
pawn.
issues. But I've seen the dysfunctional side where they actually go to war and they use the kids. And they use the kids to your father did this, your mother did that. And the kids are just filled with all types of stuff.
awful.
And they try to turn the kids. They try to
Right.
poison the
Yeah,
kids against one.
against
And the
one,
reason they do this, okay, and we're not talking now, okay, let's be clear, we're not talking the case of a divorce because one of the parents was actually either physically or sexually abusing the kids. We're not talking about that. That's obvious that those kids need to be protected from an abusive parent,
Yeah.
okay?
Right. Yes.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about there's no abuse to the kids going on, but the parents are angry and hurt at each other, and one of them will attempt to turn the kids against the other
Right.
parent. Why? Because this parent feels so insecure about themselves, they need on some very primitive level that everyone side with
On their
them.
side,
So
yes.
it'll make them
Even the
feel
children.
good about themselves. It wasn't my fault. See, everybody sides with me. I'm
Yeah.
the aggrieved party here. You are the bad boy. You bad boy. Or you
Right.
bad girl. Okay, it's very childish, very primitive.
So what's your
And it's very destructive to the kids.
Yes.
Oh, it's very
absolutely.
destructive. What's your advice? So if you are divorced, you have children, and you are involved in a new relationship, are there any techniques to introducing that new person into the children's lives?
So first step after divorce, first step before you do that,
Yes.
is you need to take some time and be single.
no doubt.
You need to take some time by yourself. You need to reflect on your relationship. You need to do some soul searching and say, okay, what are the contributing factors that I brought to this
Right.
relationship
Right.
that contributed to why it broke down? Because when I married, it was like my vision, my dream, my hope was for here and ever after. It didn't
Yes.
work out that way. So there needs to be a time of reflection and life learning of the lessons that you can take from that, so you don't end up contributing or repeating anything that
Again,
you brought.
yeah. Makes
Okay,
sense.
and then there needs to be some time for healing. Healthy relationships require healthy people, and if you're in the
Yeah.
aftermath of the divorce and you're grieving, your heart is not yet healthy, and so you need to have a period of time for healing before you can move forward. So that needs to happen first.
Understood.
But then when you get to that point and you're ready to date again, there's still kids in the home. Kids do not need to meet anybody you're dating or even need to know you're dating
Right.
until you get serious enough with a particular prospect that you're thinking this could go to the next level.
Yeah.
But before it goes to the next level, which was
kids
engagement, then it's time to bring them in and let them meet the child, have some time with the child, and you're evaluating how the child and this person gets along. If your child and this person does not get along, that person is not qualified, and you need to end it and move on, because your children we're talking children under the age of 18. Okay?
Okay.
We're not talking adult children.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking the children that you still have responsible for parenting. They have a priority over your responsibilities rather than seeking a new relationship. But if they do get along, then you can move forward and let that relationship develop to where it's going to go.
Okay, great discussion today. Thanks for joining us on the Dr. Tim Jennings Show and our discussion on marriage, divorce, and remarriage. We hope to see you next time. I'd like you to go to timjenningsmd.com for more information on this and lots of other subjects. See you next time.
Thank you.